Fellas! Welcome back to Forbidden Cards. Don't forget, the eBay store is very much thriving at the moment. Make sure to pick up your random bits and bobs for your Mitsurugi decks. That deck looks pretty good, despite what I may have thought about it in the first place. But we're here to talk about new reptile cards. We're here to put the box over your heads. There we go, very nice. Looking handsome, by the way, now that you've got the card vent holder box on your faces. Let's talk about the deck I brought to the most recent 3v3 tournament held at General Games Frankston. Does that sound very specific and not very glamorous, and also quite a small tournament to be discussing how well a deck performed? Yep, absolutely. If you want to go see a real deck profile, you go see someone who's got some balls under their chin, someone who's actually got some tops, some records, and probably lives in a country that supports events more than once a year. But just wanted to try out a couple of new ideas. I did a deck profile last weekend in Runick, Ryzeal. The theory being that you could use some board breakers to help break through a detonator or a malice end board, and then use the Runick cards to clear up what was left of the opponent's hand. In theory, sounds okay. In practice, evenly matched doesn't do a good enough job against those decks. Evenly matched will leave a detonator on the field, and it will leave or it will be negated by the Cyberse Devil's Worm that gets sent off of Dark Fluid. I think it's Dark Fluid, anyway. So, in practice, after a few games, realised that wasn't really the play, and evenly matched sometimes only takes out, Ryzeal Cross, which is just not good enough. If it's doing the same job as Cosmic Cyclone, you're probably playing evenly matched for the wrong reasons. So I switched gears, and I'll put up... excuse me. So I switched gears, and I'll put up a different profile from Dueling Book on the screen. Now, you'll notice instantly that there aren't any board breakers in the main deck. We have replaced them with Bestials. 3 Libellion to search and get branded regained, 1 Magnamode because that is all we can play, 2 Druisworm, and 1 Boldrake. That felt pretty good. It was a pretty much 1-for-1 replacement with all of the board breakers. I felt like I could fit in space. And let me tell you why I thought the Bestials were a good play. Now, to anyone who's been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last month, will know that taking a Fiendsmith Requiem out of the graveyard is a relatively strong way to prevent Fiendsmith Engine from being 1, an interrupt on your turn, and 2, infinitely recurring for your opponent. Now, people have counterplayed that to put 2 Requiem in their deck, but for your first turn going second, Requiem is not going to be an issue for you, in that you cannot recur Lacrima into Requiem back into Lacrima to send Fiendsmith in Paradise. That's something you cannot do your opponent cannot do on your first turn going second, which is half the reason you want to play the Bestials. But why play Libellion? Well, Libellion happens to be a level 8 light monster, which pairs very well with a Hugin to make a light-only Chaos Angel. Now, light-only Chaos Angel does not get both of its ancillary benefits. A light-only Chaos Angel only happens to be immune to all of your opponent's activated monster effects, which in game 1, without an imperm to negate, is enough of a threat to close out the game. And having a Libellion and a Hugin on the field, while it does imply that you have done some playing already that game, does out the detonator because it cannot go ahead and pop the Chaos Angel. Also, in most cases, Hugin is being negated by a hand trap or Ash Blossom, and Lebellion is, might be negated, but can probably stick on the field. And because it does not require an activated effect to do so, you can get Hugin and Lebellion on the board pretty harmlessly without triggering an effect, which means Detonator can't pop either of them before you make the Chaos Angel. Similar to the theory that Drift uses when you are going against the Ryzeal Fiendsmith mirror. You have one Ice Ryzeal. Was it one Ice Ryzeal? No, it was like discarding Graver is just enough to out the Detonator by making a Chaos Angel that's immune to its effects without ever being prone to a Detonator pop. Something along those lines. Also, Branded Regained is a 1-card FTK against the Malice deck so long as you are not the turn player. If you have Branded Regained on the field, then your opponent banishes, say, a Dormouse using Gold Sarcophagus, or using Dormouse to bounce White Rabbit. The Malice monster in their banished will be Chainlink 1, and your Branded Regain will be Chainlink 2 to put it back on the bottom of the deck if you're going to draw one card. Obviously, there's the synergy there with Branded Regain and all of the Runick spells. That came up a few times in playing over the weekend, but I don't think was the integral reason why that card was performing well. That and all 3 engines recur resources in a way that Ryzeal by itself can't, which is the way I'm trying to solve the consistency and follow-up issues that the Ryzeal deck seem to have. The major issue with the deck at the moment is that you can't really use both Cross and Runick Fountain. You do have to decide between the two. All of the losses I took, in which I will go through, I think are attributed to some changes in the extra deck that I should have made in hindsight and some of my own technical play. But I will cover off what my games were. Now, our team, out of I think maybe 26 teams, came 7th. My personal record was, I believe it was 3 wins, 1 draw, and a loss. The draw is essentially, no, I think it was 3 wins, 2 losses. Yeah, it would have ended up 3 wins, 2 losses. In the first round, I played against Ryzeal Fiendsmith. That deck was entirely controlled by drawing the powerful Runick spells with Branded Regain. I essentially had all 3 engines online the whole game, and enough Runick spells to protect those engines from being disrupted with a Detonator. Going first was important, which is never what you like to hear when you're playing a deck, when you're building a deck, is going first has to be important. But in that matchup, the Runick spells were just enough to clinch out the game, and no notable interactions that you would learn anything from. But so we win as a team. We win round 1, pretty convincingly. Round 2 is a loss. Now I'm playing against, I guess I would say an old adversary, but one of the better players during their time. Another Worlds competitor as well, YCS winner, all around fantastic Yu-Gi-Oh player. Now they are playing Ryzeal Fiendsmith as well, and what I learned at an unfortunate time is that there are bestials in their deck. So I do my entire turn 1 combo through hand traps, and I'm about to land the Lebellion into Regained. I've added Magnamut. I go Magnamut on their effect veiler, and they chain their own Magnamut. That tempo swing is enough for me to lose the game on the spot. There were ways to sequence around that from happening. I could have easily started with Lebellion and then used Magnamut to manage the Lebellion from the graveyard. Just generally trying to use the Bestial before my opponent can chain theirs by leaving the monsters off of my field, if it were that important to me. But had I done that, they could have easily used the Magnaboot later in the turn. Or my play should have been trying to get to Ryzeal across safely, at which point, the Magnaboot is irrelevant. But the Duo Drive gets negated, I play right through it anyway. Make Detonator, Dugares, draw the... I think I drew the Rebellion, so maybe it's a midpoint. Yeah, draw the Rebellion, discard, grab Magnaboot on their Effect Veiler, which immediately gets banished by their own Magnaboot. I realise the writing is on the wall very quickly, because that means they can search a Druisworm and immediately plant the Druisworm into the Detonator when they go for any link play. That's unfortunate, but sometimes they do just have the one-off. Game 2, I make 2 very critical misplays, because I have somewhat ruled out the presence of certain cards in their deck, which was very correct of me. On one turn, I decide that the best play is for me to turn my Dugares into attack position, activate the effect to make my Chaos Angel 7,000, thinking that I'm playing on the clock based on the way my opponent's team is communicating. And I run into a Bestial, which clears the Druisworm. No, not the Druisworm. I run into a Druisworm, which clears the Dugares. And shortly after that, the Chaos Angel is banished with Metaltronus. Now, I'm not out of the game at this point, but I decide to go for an extremely wide board the following turn, when I only really needed to make a single Detonator to contest any board that they could make on their turn. I think it's 7 at that point. Had I just made the Detonator, it's a very different game, but unfortunately I played myself into Nibiru, which essentially cost me the game at that point. There was no way of coming back. And with only one of my teammates having won their match, the round was over. The game was completely on me to throw, and that's just unfortunately what I chose to do. In those positions, I should not be summoning Dugares. I should be summoning Duo Drive, trying to activate Duo Drive to get cross. That way, the Bestials aren't resolving during the battle phase, so I can get through some critical damage. And I have cross for Nibiru later on, and I know he's already run through some hand traps, trying to prevent me from playing on the previous turn. Yeah, overall, I just played poorly. I played poorly. Too many options. Played poorly. Classic example of overstimulation from too many cardboards. Round 3, I win. Round 3, I'm going to win without time. Our team wins because I'm drawing. Player A is drawing and player C won. I win early in game 1 because the Runick spells are just too powerful for controlling the game, and my opponent doesn't have the key hand traps like Ash Blossom or Ghost Ogre to prevent me from getting to that point, and they're not super familiar with the feats with cards and the appropriate combos. I get into a bit of a standoff in game 2, where both my opponent and I have Chaos Angels on the board, both Cavendish River Battle, both immune to activated monster effects, and I think I'm ahead because I have Freezing Curses and Flashing Fire set, but eventually my opponent draws into Imperm, sets that, and is able to clear my Chaos Angel just by swinging over it. And unfortunately I have to use Runick in the previous turn to stay alive or prevent my opponent from searching what could be Hole Thruster. If I presume my opponent isn't playing Hole Thruster, which is probably safe at that point because they are... because most Fiendsmith decks don't really play it, they're only really playing Cross. If I make that assumption, then I don't negate a Duo Drive. I let them go through the motions, and then I try and remove. Then I just try and remove any Ryzeal monsters that they make after that. Not even. At that point, I'm just trying to keep the Chaos Angel alive by fading imperms every turn. Unfortunately, that just didn't happen, and I didn't draw into engine anywhere near soon enough in order to capitalize on that position. That's perfectly fine. The deck came up a bit short for me, and I think I played it somewhat ignorantly by just jamming things into a Chaos Angel and trying to survive. Game 3 is so comfortably in my favour before time is called that there is no way I don't win the match in the consecutive 2 to 3 turns. But you have to consider the time is a factor. One thing that you'll notice in the deck is that I'm playing Mutant and not Cowboy. That is a huge mistake. There was almost no times where I found I could summon Mutant at the end of the turn because I was constantly rank 4 locked. If I was going to play a time card in this deck, it should have absolutely been Gargo Cowboy. But that's an example of one of the small things you discover just through the course of practice. But our team wins round 3, so no harm, no foul. Round 4, our team does win. It's a similar position where player C has a win, I have a draw, and player A has a draw. In that game, I get to go first. I have the Runick and the Ryzeal engines pretty much online. I do stop short because I get full rust. Now, that's perfectly fine. The key part of the deck is that you can summon a Runick out around a full rust as channeling 2 to prevent giving your opponent a card. But unfortunately, I had to, I decided just to make a detonator, which is totally fine. But the detonator plus the couple of Runick spells were just not enough. Runick Fountain got ashed a couple of times during the game. Thinking I was in a strong position, I think I ended up having to jam a Freezing Curses and a Flashing Fire to deal with Fiendsmith cards in order for them to not make a Chaos Angel or to out the Chaos Angel they had already made. I think if I had used my detonator against their effects more proactively, thinking I was going to lose, if he has talents, I'm going to lose anyway. So I have Fountain, 2 Runick spells set, the detonator on field with aggregator underneath. Now it doesn't feel very comfortable in this format because Fountain can be pretty much negated at any time, so you do have to set all of your Runick spells, which is not really that relevant unless someone's playing like Feather Duster or Lightning Storm in the main deck. But anticipating that would be negated, I set my Runick spells, which is I have a Freezing and a Flashing. Unfortunately, the first Runick I try and resolve in his turn doesn't do enough, and Runick Fountain gets ashed. And I'm not using Detonator proactively enough, thinking that playing around talents is the best option for me. Instead, my Detonator eventually gets negated and achieved nothing for me in that game. So I lose game 1. Game 2, my opponent Lanciers me in the draw phase. Now that's pretty much a dream situation for my deck because all of the Runicks are chainable. Now at that point I had Runick Tip, so I just chain Tip to search, banish 1 card. I use the Runick that I did search to distribute the special summon so I can make a duo drive. And then my opponent is so far behind in card advantage because the Lancier really did nothing and doesn't have access to their own Ryzeal cards that the game does quickly end. Now game 1 did take a long time, but game 3, opponent goes first, sets up the full Ryzeal combo, full Ryzeal Fiendsmith combo. Nothing really that I can do or say about that, but I have a lot of good Runick spells in my hand, and I have interruption for the Fiendsmith cards with the Bestial, so I'm feeling very comfortable. And I think with the volume of cards I have left, that the game does end in my favour if you go over multiple turns, but we won't know the result of that because the round time ended. My match ended in the draw. We ended up winning because we were 1 point ahead. Round 5, our team loses. Now, our team loses pretty unanimously. Yeah, our team loses pretty unanimously. Player A loses their match again. Player C, I believe, narrowly wins because of time. And this is the game where it comes up where I should be making Cowboy instead of playing Mutant. I was playing against Malice. It was pure like Cybers Malice with Code Talker and Dotscaper. Game 1, I feel comfortable because I have a Bestial for the Degrade Swarm. But unfortunately, because they've done their full combo, they have pretty much infinite interruptions on my turn, and I can't stick Fountain up through a White Binder and eventually just lose to access code spam links the following turn. Game 2 is a very, very comfortable win. I should have conceded the game earlier. That was my one mistake. If I concede that game earlier, then I might have a better chance in Game 3. In Game 2, I win very comfortably because my opponent activates a shifter in the draw phase. Now, you would think that's pretty damaging, which for the bestial portion, like Lebellions and stuff, it certainly can be. But in this situation, I had Branded Regain. Now, that lets me do a couple of things. It means that I can make Duo Drive with Regain on the field, detach for effect, and then the Regain put one of my banished Ice Ryzeal back under the bottom to draw a card, and it also turns their first Malice effect off. So I don't need much to do here. I just need to keep that one Regained alive. All I do is stick a Detonator on the field. Well, I stick a Duo Drive and the Detonator on the field, sort of throwing caution to the wind about cards being banished. I have Book of Eclipse set, and Branded Regain on the field. They set a trap, they're normal Dormouse. I activate Book of Eclipse. They chain the Malice trap to the banish and special summon from their deck. The one they special summon White Rabbit, which is immediately set by Book of Eclipse. Dormouse triggers in banish, and then I put that back with Regain and draw another card, and the game ends from there. Game 3, again, similar problem, where the Malice deck is just free to do whatever they like because I'm not playing any hand traps. I'm essentially eating my lunch at that point, and I remember the combo does end on them being higher life points if they resolve the Reborn trap the following turn, and so my opponent ended on 8,200 life points. Had I had Cowboy in the extra deck and made a couple of different decisions about which Runick monsters to summon, I might be in a more comfortable position. I ended up summoning Hugin to search Fountain, which ended up being a really big error on my part. I needed the extra 4 to go into Duo Drive and Detonator so I could protect the Cowboy from being negated when its effect go off. In that matchup, I'm also trying to force through Exciton, but that's never really realistic. And I just didn't open any of the breakers that are required to win that game. So unfortunately, our team ended there 7th. My only real issue with the deck was the quality of time card I was playing. I also tried playing deck Lockdown, but I found that was causing me more trouble than it was for my opponent, and is not as effective in the Ryzeal matchup as I thought. All it really does is deafen an X Ryzeal, which eventually negates the deck Lockdown anyway. It just makes the Ryzeals they've already got less valuable. Against a weaker hand, deck Lockdown definitely does a good job. In theory, it shuts down Well, it means you can't tract, you can't bonfire, you can't search with X, ice, or sword. What else can't you? You can't Requiem if you have it. You can't Engraver. You should be stopping most of that deck unless their first play is exactly X Ryzeal, send aggregator, negate. Nothing you can really do about that, unfortunately. The matches I lost are either because the player was better than I am, or because I just fundamentally misunderstood what I needed to win that matchup in the deck building process. What I will change is probably the side deck, and moving forward I will be testing the Mitsurugi cards. I very much undervalued them on first glance. I had no idea the ritual was as powerful as it is, and I'll very much be interested in seeing how American players progress once Supreme Darkness releases. Anyway, thank you for joining. I'm finally pulling into my street at home, which means I've been recording for probably 35 minutes now. So if you have been watching this entire time, look, absolutely bless your hearts. Again, jump on the eBay store, see if you can find a good deal. I list pretty much everything at a base of $1.50, which means people are snapping up, key cards for their decks like King of Feral Imps and Idiot Servant, like Maximus. All of those cards are going pretty cheap if you can snap them up. I'm not very good at updating prices. And if you want to see any other deck profiles or discussions on the channel, let me know. I don't get very many comments, so the ones I do get I take quite seriously, and I will happy to review your feedback. Anyway, bye fellas.